He hadn't seen the elephant in 39 years, and now it was walking straight toward him like it had something to say. Michael Carter stood frozen behind the low wooden barrier, his hands trembling slightly as the massive gray figure emerged from the far end of the enclosure. Each slow, deliberate step pressing into the dusty ground with a quiet, heavy certainty that made everyone nearby fall silent, because this wasn't just any elephant, and this wasn't just any man, and the air between them felt charged with something no one could quite explain. Not yet, not until it was too late to look away, because 39 years ago, this same elephant had been no bigger than a large dog, frightened, alone, and clinging to the only human it trusted, and that human had been Michael, a young caretaker barely in his 20s, who spent sleepless nights feeding him, calming him, whispering to him, as if the animal could understand every word. And maybe it did, maybe it always had, but time has a way of erasing things. Or at least that's what everyone believes, especially when decades pass, especially when animals grow, adapt, and forget, because forgetting is survival, and survival doesn't leave room for memories that old. Or at least that's what the staff had told Michael earlier that morning as he signed the visitor log with shaking hands. Don't expect too much. One of them had said gently, trying not to sound cruel. He's not the same anymore. And maybe they were right, because the elephant approaching him now didn't look like the playful calf he remembered. It looked older, stronger, distant, its massive ears flicking slowly as if scanning the world around it without urgency, without recognition. And for a moment, just a moment, Michael felt something tighten in his chest, a quiet fear creeping in, not of the elephant, but of what it might not remember, because what if those years had meant nothing? What if all those moments, all those quiet nights and soft whispers had simply disappeared into time? And what if standing here now, after traveling thousands of miles and waiting nearly for decades, he was nothing more than a stranger to the one being he never forgot? The elephant stopped about 30 feet away, its head lifting slightly, its eyes fixed on him, and the silence deepened, heavy and uncomfortable, the kind of silence that makes people shift their weight and hold their breath without realizing it. No one spoke, no one moved, because something was happening, something subtle, something impossible to read. And then the elephant made a low, rumbling sound, not loud, not aggressive, but unfamiliar enough to send a ripple of tension through the small group of onlookers behind Michael. A handler stepped forward cautiously, his voice low. "Sir, you might want to step back." But Michael didn't move. He couldn't, because in that moment, with the elephant standing there, watching him, making that strange sound deep in its chest, he felt like stepping back would mean letting go of something he had held onto for nearly 40 years, and he wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. Not when the answer was standing right in front of him, hidden behind those dark, unreadable eyes, waiting, just waiting to reveal whether this was a reunion or the end of a memory that only one of them still carried. 39 years earlier, long before the gray weight of time settled into every step that elephant now took, Michael Carter had stood in a very different place, under a wide blue sky with the dry heat pressing against his skin and the distant hum of insects filling the air, holding a bottle in his hand and staring down at a trembling baby elephant that could barely stay upright on its own legs, its eyes wide and uncertain as if the world had already asked too much of it. And in that moment, Michael had not been thinking about the future or about how fragile memories could be. He had only seen a life that needed him. And without hesitation, he stepped forward, speaking softly, the way people do when they want to be understood even without words. "It is okay. I am right here," he had said, even though he knew the elephant could not understand the language. Yet somehow the tone was enough, because the small animal stopped backing away, its ears twitching as it leaned slightly toward him, unsure but curious, and that was how it began. Not with something dramatic or unforgettable, but with a quiet decision to stay, day after day, night after night. Michael fed him every few hours, measured carefully in ounces, adjusting the formula to match what the veterinarians recommended, waking up before sunrise and long after midnight, sometimes sleeping on a thin cot just a few feet away so the calf would not panic when it woke up alone. And over time, something changed, something that could not be written down in any manual or explained in any report, because the elephant began to follow him, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. its small steps matching his, as if it had chosen him not just as a caretaker, but as something more, something closer, and Michael felt it too. In the way the calf would calm down at the sound of his voice, in the way it would reach out gently with its trunk, not searching for food, but for contact, for reassurance, for a connection that seemed to go beyond instinct. And the other staff noticed it as well, joking at first that the elephant had decided who its favorite human was. But even they grew quiet when they saw how deep that bond was becoming, how the calf would refuse to eat unless Michael was nearby, how it would become restless when he left even for a short time, how it seemed to recognize him from a distance, long before he spoke or moved close. And for Michael, those days passed in a blur of routine and quiet moments that felt bigger than they appeared. Moments that did not seem important at the time, but somehow settled into memory like something permanent, something that could never fade, until the day everything changed, because not all bonds are allowed to continue. Not all connections are meant to last, and one morning, without warning, a decision was made that would separate them, a transfer to another facility. A plan that made sense on paper but ignored everything that could not be measured, and Michael had stood there watching as the young elephant was led away, calling out softly, confused, turning its head again and again as if trying to understand why the one presence it trusted was no longer following. And Michael had wanted to step forward, to stop it, to explain something that could not be explained, but he did not, because sometimes doing the right thing means letting go, even when it feels wrong. And as the distance grew between them that day, he told himself something simple, something he needed to believe, that the elephant would forget, that it would adapt, that it would move on, because that is what animals do, and maybe, just maybe, that was easier than wondering if it would remember. Back in the present, the distance between them felt heavier than the years that had passed, as Michael stood rooted in place while the elephant remained motionless, its massive frame casting a long shadow across the dry ground. Its eyes still locked on him with a focus that was impossible to interpret, not warm, not cold, just steady, as if it were searching for something deeper than recognition. And the longer that silence stretched, the more the tension began to shift from anticipation into doubt, because nothing was happening, not the way people expected, not the way stories were supposed to unfold. And behind him, Michael could hear the faint rustling of movement, the quiet shuffle of staff members repositioning themselves, their voices low and cautious, trying not to startle the animal. "He is acting different today," one of them whispered, just loud enough to reach another. "Watch his posture," another replied. And Michael did not need to turn around to know what they were thinking, because he could feel it in the air, that growing concern, that subtle shift from curiosity to caution. And then the elephant moved, not quickly, not aggressively, but with a deliberate step forward that seemed to echo louder than it should have, pressing into the ground with a weight that demanded attention. And another step followed, then another, closing the distance inch by inch, its ears lifting slightly, its trunk swaying just enough to suggest awareness. And that was when the handler's voice came again, firmer this time. "Sir, please step back, just a few feet." But Michael did not move, not because he was ignoring them, but because something inside him refused to break the moment, even if it meant standing still in the middle of uncertainty. And as the elephant continued forward, the reactions around him grew more urgent, a second staff member stepping closer, ready to intervene if needed, their eyes fixed not on Michael, but on the animal, reading every movement, every subtle shift in behavior, searching for signs that could not be ignored, because they had seen enough over the years to know that animals do not always respond the way people hope they will, especially not after decades apart. And for a brief second, doubt finally reached Michael, not loud, not overwhelming, but quiet and sharp, slipping into his thoughts with a single question: what if they were right? What if time had erased everything? What if standing here now meant nothing to the elephant at all? And as that thought settled in, the elephant suddenly stopped again, no more than 15 feet away, its head lowering slightly, its gaze never breaking. And then it made another sound, deeper this time, longer, a low vibration that seemed to travel through the air rather than cut through it, causing a few people behind Michael to step back instinctively, unsure of what it meant, unsure of what might come next. And in that moment, everything felt suspended, caught between two possibilities, one where the animal would turn away and leave behind nothing but silence, and another where something far more unexpected was about to happen. But no one could tell which direction it would go. Not yet. Not until the next move was made. The air felt heavier with every passing second as the elephant stood there, its massive presence filling the space between uncertainty and something no one could yet define, and Michael could feel every heartbeat echoing louder in his chest, not from fear, but from the weight of what this moment might mean, because after all these years, after all the distance and silence, everything now came down to what the animal in front of him chose to do next. And around him, the tension had reached a point where even the smallest movement drew attention. One handler slowly raising his hand as if ready to signal, another shifting closer to the gate, their eyes locked on the elephant's posture, reading it carefully, professionally. But beneath that calm training was something else, a quiet unease that had begun to spread, because the behavior they were seeing did not match the usual patterns. Not calm curiosity, not clear recognition, but something in between, something unpredictable. And then the elephant moved again, this time faster than before, not a charge, not sudden enough to alarm, but deliberate, purposeful, closing the gap until it was only a few feet away, and that was when the warning came sharper. Sir, you need to step back now. But Michael still did not move, his feet planted as if the ground itself refused to let him leave, because stepping back would mean breaking whatever fragile thread still connected them. And he could not do that, not when the answer was so close. And the elephant's trunk lifted slightly, hovering in the air, not reaching, not touching, just there, suspended, as if it were testing the space between them. And for a brief second, everything seemed to hold its breath, even the distant sounds of the reserve fading into the background, leaving only that quiet, powerful presence standing in front of him. And then something shifted, something subtle but unmistakable. The elephant let out a low, uneven rumble, different from before, softer but deeper, almost hesitant, and its head tilted just slightly, not in aggression, not in warning, but in a way that felt almost searching, and Michael felt it immediately, not as a clear thought, but as something deeper, something instinctive, like a memory brushing against the present. And he swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper as he spoke. Charlie, it is me. The name hung in the air, simple and fragile, and for a moment, nothing happened. The elephant did not react, did not step closer, did not move away, and behind him, someone exhaled quietly, as if the tension had reached its limit, as if this was the point where reality would settle in and the moment would end, without the answer he had hoped for. But then the elephant's trunk lowered slowly, inch by inch, until it hovered just inches from Michael's chest, and stopped again, not touching, not yet, just close enough that he could feel the faint warmth of its breath. And in that stillness, in that fragile space between contact and distance, something unspoken passed between them, something that did not need explanation, but still had not revealed itself fully, not yet, not until the next movement would decide everything. Michael could feel the warmth of the elephant's breath just inches from his chest, steady and real, yet the space between them still held a fragile uncertainty, as if one wrong movement could shatter everything that had built up to this moment. And his hands trembled slightly at his sides, not out of fear, but from the overwhelming weight of memory pressing against the present, because standing there now, he was no longer just a man in his 60s facing a massive animal. He was the same young caretaker who had once sat beside a frightened calf in the quiet hours of the night, whispering softly, promising something he never knew if he could keep. And now, that promise felt suspended in the air, waiting to be answered, and the elephant remained still, its trunk hovering so close that Michael could almost feel the faint movement of air with each slow breath it took. And then, without warning, the trunk shifted slightly, brushing just the fabric of his shirt, so light it could have been mistaken for the wind. But it was not the wind, and the moment that contact was made, something changed, not around them, but within it, as if a silent recognition had flickered to life, fragile but undeniable, and Michael inhaled sharply, his eyes widening as he resisted the urge to move too quickly, too suddenly, because instinct told him that this was not the time to rush, not the time to break whatever delicate connection was forming. And behind him, the handlers had gone completely still, no longer calling out, no longer stepping forward, because they saw it too, that subtle shift, that almost invisible line between uncertainty and something else entirely, and the elephant made a sound again, softer this time, almost like a low hum, and its trunk pressed a little more firmly now, not forceful, not demanding, but intentional, as if it were confirming something it had not yet fully accepted. And Michael felt his throat tighten, emotions rising faster than he could control, because deep down, he knew that animals did not act like this without reason. They did not hesitate like this without something pulling them back. And as the seconds stretched on, the elephant's trunk slowly moved upward, tracing a small path across his chest before pausing again near his shoulder, and Michael closed his eyes for just a brief moment, overwhelmed not by what was happening, but by what it might mean. Because this was no longer about hope or doubt. This was something real, something unfolding in front of him that could not be explained by logic alone. And yet, even now, even as that connection seemed to strengthen, there was still a part of him holding back, a quiet fear that it could disappear just as quickly, that this could all fade into nothing if he misread the moment. And then the elephant pulled back slightly, just enough to create space again, and the sudden absence of contact felt louder than anything before it, leaving a silence that seemed to question everything that had just happened. And Michael opened his eyes again, his heart pounding, unsure if what he had felt was the beginning of something or just a brief echo of the past, because the truth had not fully revealed itself yet, not completely, and the next move would decide whether this fragile connection would hold or disappear once more into time. For a brief moment after the contact broke, everything felt uncertain again, as if the fragile thread that had just begun to form might dissolve without warning. And Michael stood there holding his breath, his eyes fixed on the elephant, searching for even the smallest sign that what he had just felt was real and not something his heart had imagined. And the elephant remained still, its massive body quiet, its gaze steady. But something had changed, something subtle that could not be ignored. Because this time, it did not turn away, it did not retreat back into the distance. Instead it lingered, its ears shifting slightly, its trunk lowering and then lifting again as if caught between two instincts, one that told it to move on and another that held it firmly in place. And then it made a sound, not the deep rumble from before, but something softer, higher, almost uncertain, a sound that did not carry across the enclosure but stayed close, like a memory trying to find its way back to the surface. And the moment Michael heard it, something inside him tightened, not with fear, but with recognition, because that sound, faint and fragile, was not new to him. It was something he had heard long ago, in the quiet nights when a small, frightened calf would call out softly, searching for reassurance, searching for the one presence it trusted, and without thinking, without planning it, Michael responded the only way he knew how, his voice low, steady, and familiar. "Hey. Easy now. You are okay." The words came naturally, the same tone, the same rhythm he had used all those years ago, and the effect was immediate. The elephant's head lifted slightly, its ears pausing mid-motion as if something had caught its attention in a way nothing else had, and the air between them shifted again, no longer filled with doubt, but with something deeper, something building quietly. And then the elephant stepped closer, closing the last few feet between them, its presence now overwhelming, its size impossible to ignore. But there was no tension in the movement, no hesitation, only a quiet certainty. And as it reached him, its trunk lifted once more, this time without pause, without hovering, moving directly toward him until it gently pressed against his shoulder, firmer than before but still careful, still controlled. And Michael could not hold it back anymore, the emotion rising through him as his hand slowly lifted, trembling as it reached out and rested lightly against the elephant's trunk, the contact grounding, real, undeniable. And the elephant did not pull away, it did not resist, instead it remained there, still and present. And then, in a movement so subtle yet so powerful, it let out another soft sound, one that echoed the past so clearly that there was no room left for doubt. Because this was not curiosity, this was not coincidence, this was recognition. And in that moment, after 39 years of silence, distance, and uncertainty, the truth revealed itself completely, not through something dramatic or loud, but through a simple, undeniable connection that had never truly been lost, only buried beneath time, waiting for this exact moment to return. Michael's hand remained pressed gently against the elephant's trunk, but the moment the truth settled in, his composure began to break in a way he had not expected, because for years he had imagined this reunion in quiet, controlled thoughts, always telling himself he would stay calm, that he would accept whatever happened, even if it meant nothing. But now that the reality stood in front of him, breathing, remembering, choosing him again after nearly 4 decades, all of that control slipped away, and he felt it in his chest first, a sudden tightness that made it hard to breathe, then in his eyes as they filled before he could stop it, and he let out a quiet, unsteady breath that turned into something closer to a laugh and a sob at the same time, because there was no other way to process what he was feeling, and the elephant did not move away. It stayed there, its trunk still resting against him, as if anchoring him in that moment. And then it shifted slightly, not pulling back but adjusting, sliding its trunk more firmly across his shoulder and upper back in a slow, deliberate motion that felt almost like an embrace. And that was when Michael lost the last bit of distance he had been holding on to, his free hand rising instinctively, pressing gently against the elephant's skin, his fingers trembling as he held on, not tightly, not forcefully, just enough to confirm that this was real, that it was not going to disappear if he blinked, and behind him, the silence that had filled the enclosure finally broke, not with loud reactions, but with quiet disbelief, soft gasps, the sound of someone whispering, "Oh my God," as the staff and visitors watched what none of them had truly expected to see, because even those who had spent years working with animals, who understood their intelligence, their memory, their emotional depth, still rarely witnessed something like this, something so clear, so undeniable. And one of the handlers lowered his hand slowly, no longer ready to intervene, no longer concerned, because whatever uncertainty had been there before had completely vanished, replaced by something calm, something steady, and as the elephant remained close, it let out another soft rumble, longer this time, deeper, not a call of confusion or hesitation, but something that carried a different weight, something that felt almost like recognition made audible. And Michael closed his eyes briefly, letting the sound settle into him, because it was familiar in a way that went beyond memory. It was something he had felt more than heard all those years ago, something that had connected them without words. And now, standing here again, he realized that connection had never truly been broken, only stretched across time, waiting for this exact moment to return. And when he finally opened his eyes, he did not see distance anymore. He did not see uncertainty. He saw the same presence he had known before, older, stronger, changed in ways he could not fully understand, but still there, still real. And he whispered softly, his voice steadier now, filled with something deeper than hope, "I knew you would remember." Not because he had been certain, but because in this moment, it felt like the only truth that mattered. And the elephant responded not with movement or noise, but by staying, by remaining right there beside him, as if that alone was the answer. The moment did not fade the way moments usually do. It did not slip quietly into memory or dissolve into something smaller. Instead it stayed, expanding slowly, filling the space around them with a warmth that felt almost impossible to describe. And Michael remained there with his hand resting against the elephant, no longer hesitant, no longer questioning, because the uncertainty that had once held him back was gone, replaced by something steady and certain. And the elephant stayed close, not shifting away, not losing interest, but remaining present in a way that felt intentional, as if this reunion was not just a passing recognition, but something it chose to hold on to. And its trunk moved again, this time more confidently, sliding gently across Michael's shoulder and then resting along his back, a slow and careful motion that carried a quiet familiarity, something that did not need explanation. And Michael let out a soft breath, his shoulders relaxing as the weight of the moment settled into something calmer, something more grounded. And for the first time since he had arrived, he was not thinking about what might happen next. He was simply there, fully present in a moment he had waited for without even realizing how deeply it mattered. And around them, the atmosphere had changed completely. The earlier tension replaced by a quiet stillness, people no longer shifting nervously or whispering uncertainly, but watching with a kind of reverence, as if they understood they were witnessing something rare, something that did not happen often, something that could not be recreated or forced, and one of the handlers lowered his gaze slightly, a small smile forming as he exhaled, the concern that had once been in his posture. Now gone, replaced by acceptance, and the elephant made another soft sound, a low vibration that seemed to carry more ease now, less hesitation, and Michael responded instinctively, his voice calm, steady, the same tone he had used so many years ago, speaking softly, as if continuing a conversation that had only been paused, not ended, and the elephant remained close, its presence steady, its movements unhurried. And for a moment, time itself felt different, not stretched or rushed, but simply still, as if the years between then and now had folded into a single point, and Michael's hand moved slightly, tracing along the elephant's trunk with care, not exploring, not testing, but acknowledging, reaffirming something that both of them now seemed to understand without needing to express it, and the connection between them no longer felt fragile, it felt rooted, something that had endured quietly through time, waiting for this exact moment to be seen again. And as the elephant stood beside him, unmoving, present, there was no longer any doubt, no lingering question about whether it remembered, because the answer was no longer something to search for, it was something they were living, right there, in a silence that spoke louder than anything words could ever explain. As the sun slowly dipped lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the enclosure, nothing between them felt rushed or forced, and for the first time since that day so many years ago, Michael was no longer carrying the quiet weight of what had been left unfinished, because standing there now, with the elephant beside him, everything that once felt uncertain had found its answer in the simplest way possible, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through presence, through recognition, through the quiet decision of an animal to stay close instead of walking away. And Michael let out a slow breath, one that seemed to carry decades of waiting with it, his hand still resting gently against the elephant's trunk as if letting go might somehow break the moment, even though deep down he knew it would not, because what they had just experienced was not fragile anymore. It was something that had already proven it could endure time, distance, and change, and the elephant shifted slightly, not stepping away, but adjusting its stance so it stood even closer beside him, its massive body calm, its movements unhurried, and Michael could not help but smile, a quiet, genuine expression that came not from surprise anymore, but from understanding, because he finally realized something he had not fully allowed himself to believe before, that some connections are not erased by time. They are only hidden beneath it, waiting for the right moment to return. And behind him, the small group of people who had witnessed everything remained still, as if none of them wanted to interrupt what was happening, as if they understood that this moment did not belong to them. It belonged to something far deeper, something that did not need an audience. And one of the handlers quietly stepped back, lowering his head slightly in a gesture of respect, because even he, after years of experience, knew that what they had just seen was rare, something that could not be trained or predicted, only felt. And Michael slowly moved his hand, not pulling away completely, but letting it rest more lightly now, giving space while still holding onto that connection, and the elephant did not follow or resist. It simply remained there, steady and calm, as if that was enough, as if being close was all it needed. And for a brief moment, Michael closed his eyes again,